As we've been reporting, Joe Biden has issued a response after 4 women accused him of inappropriate behavior. 2 detailed their experiences to the New York Times. DJ Hill is one of those women. She is a writer who met Biden at a 2012 fundraising event. She joins us now from Aspen, Colorado. Welcome, DJ. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Tanya. It's good to be here.
If you would, can you describe for us your interaction with Joe Biden at that fundraising event about 6 years ago?
So it was a meet and greet with him. It wasn't going to be any length of time we would be spending with him. We waited in line, and when it was our turn to go up and meet Vice President Biden, I approached him first, introduced myself. My husband, Bob, came up behind me and did the same, and we made some small talk, waiting for the photographer to get ready to take our picture. And as we stood waiting and kind of chatting, Vice President Biden put his arms around both of our shoulders, and it seemed like a comfortable experience. And as the photographer was taking the shot or getting ready to take the shot, I felt, and my husband noticed, that Mr. Biden's hand that had been on my shoulder slowly disappeared and did a slow descent down my back until he reached my waist.
And how did that make you feel? Can you describe what you thought in that moment?
In all honesty, I was shocked. That wasn't something I had anticipated that the Vice President of the United States would do. We have been to events similar as this, and candidates have always acted, or governors or whoever have always acted what I felt that made me comfortable. And in this instance, I was in shock. I just kind of froze, and my husband Bob had seen his hand go down and ended up making a joke because he could just see my face freeze. He knows me quite well, and he knew that what was happening was making me feel very uncomfortable. And so I was very happy when the experience was over, and it's actually hard to recall today.
And clearly, your husband noted your discomfort. Did the two of you discuss it at the time? And why is it important for you to talk about this now?
I really feel that it's been inspiring for me, whether it's Miss Flores or Dr. Ford or Miss Caruso, to hear their stories and their bravery in talking about similar experiences. And it's one of those things, when I was listening to the news report with Miss Flores, and she started to share her experience, and it was like my insides just knotted up, and I thought, someone else does know that, someone else does understand that. And I felt very strongly that we have had this cancer on both our politics and our country for so long, and this behavior, this culture needs to change, and it needs to change now.
And DJ, I spoke to Ms. Flores about her experience, and while it was very upsetting for her, and she called it incredibly inappropriate, she said it didn't appear to be sexual to her. Did you have that same sense with this behavior from Joe Biden towards you? Did it feel sexual?
I can't say that that's the case. I would call it extremely uncomfortable, especially, and I think this is a fairly common thing, people that are in positions of power. The person that's on the receiving end doesn't feel like they have a choice. They don't feel like, we've got the Secret Service standing right there, and we've got the photographer, and we have other people standing in line, and honestly, I didn't feel like there was a choice in that moment. And I just think that people have to start standing up we all have to stand up together, whether we're young women, we're young men, we're my age, whatever we are, we need to band together and say, right now, you know, the Me Too movement has happened. We all know now that we agree that this behavior is not acceptable, and we have to stand up, and it has to end now. It has to be a zero tolerance, in my opinion, going forward.
And DJ, have you seen Joe Biden's apology video where he promises to change his behavior going forward?
I actually did see that today.
And what did you think of it? Do you think he went far enough?
It's hard for me because, you know, he really talked about that he's a gregarious man, that this is just part of his nature. He's a huggy, you know, touchy-feely kind of guy. And I have known people like that. I felt that President Obama was a very charismatic man, very kind, very caring, but he knew where to draw the line, and he always was very respectful to people, and I think that hasn't been something he's had to deal with. And so as much as I appreciate Mr. Biden acknowledging this, I think that's a first step, and I think that we have a long way to go. Whether or not he decides that he truly wants to change this behavior, he says, I get it, I get it. I am hopeful, but it remains to be seen. And I think we all need to be watching, and we all need to have an expectation for how that should go.
And DJ, as you know, he has a lot of defenders who say, you know, his style is just one of exuberant affection that can get a little physical at times, but no harm or sexual nuance is intended. And in fact, no woman has to date come forward accusing him of sexual assault. So I'm just curious if you think that his past behavior should be disqualifying, as Ms. Flores does.
I guess I would say I don't feel I'm the one to make that call. I think he needs to, you know, search his own soul as to his motivations. I don't know what that is. I know how I felt in this experience. Whether or not he decides to run or people encourage him to run, there are people who know Mr. Biden much better than I do, and people who have perhaps given him advice about his politics and have advised him. I heard several commentators today basically, or experts say, no, they're just, if you're running for office, we're not grabbing people, we're not kissing them, we're not, you know, hugging them. Just no. And it has to be important how the person that is experiencing those things feels. And I guess I don't feel qualified to say whether or not he should be running.
So would you support him if he does run for the Democratic nomination?
Again, after hearing it wasn't actually an apology, if you listen closely, but he kept saying he gets it. And I'm going to be watching. I mean, I'm very much interested in it. For me, it's words, but it's also actions. So
are you a Democrat? And if so, is there someone in the Democratic field that you would support right now?
I am an independent, actually, and so I am looking at all candidates that are out there. I'm weighing, you know, their views on policy. I'm weighing all the things that you are supposed to be looking at with a candidate. I mean, I just think these behaviors that we've seen for, you know, decades are very distracting from the issues that we really need to be focusing on in 2019.
So if it does come down to Biden versus Trump in 2020, who would you vote for?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I would be waiting to see, you know, I would be waiting to see both of them. Both of them have had these, not the same allegations, but I think that we need to pay very close attention to, again, words and actions.
Do you, though, see a distinction between the allegations that, you know, Joe Biden is facing and the allegations that Donald Trump is facing when it comes to women?
How do I see those as?
So do you see a distinction between those allegations?
Actually, I do. You know, admittedly, we have things on tape of being able to grab a woman and kiss her, or you know, touch her private parts. That's a big difference, in my opinion. And I think voters are going to be very pointed about what they're looking for and who they feel is going to lead us forward. That's going to be, because let's be honest, our generation is here, but there are amazing young people that are coming up, and I'm excited to see that they're being taught both in schools and colleges that this behavior is not acceptable. And I think many of them are just looking at it saying, why are we even still talking about this? Isn't it just common knowledge that you don't talk about women that way? That's not appropriate that you would grab a woman. And so I'm excited to see how the young voters are going to approach this election.
I think a lot of women would agree with you. DJ Hill, we thank you so much for your time and for sharing your personal experience with us.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.